Have you ever walked into a room and felt the temperature of someone's pain before they said a single word? Have you ever smiled while your body was already bracing for someone else's disappointment, someone else's anger, someone else's silent collapse? And have you ever wondered why the things you do to survive in this world look so strange to people who only know how to feel their own emotions? Because that is the lonely part no one talks about. Not the depth, not the intuition, not the kindness, the loneliness. The kind that comes from seeing too much, sensing too much, carrying too much, and still being told you are dramatic, distant, intense, hard to read, too sensitive, too guarded, too available, then suddenly unavailable. People love the warmth of an empath until they realize that warmth came from a nervous system that learned to scan every room like it was entering a storm. And here is the brutal truth. A lot of genuine empaths are not just gifted at feeling. They are patterned by pain. They became emotionally literate because at some point it was safer to read the room than to relax inside it. Safer to notice micro-expressions than to trust words. Safer to detect tension before it exploded. What looks like magic is often adaptation. What looks spiritual is sometimes survival. What looks soft can be the result of a body that never fully learned how to come down from alertness. That does not make your empathy fake. It makes it expensive. Because when your amygdala learns early that people can shift without warning, it becomes hyper-attuned. It starts tagging tone changes, pauses, eye movements, energy drops. Your nervous system becomes a private investigator. Cortisol teaches your body to stay prepared. Dopamine tricks you into feeling relief when you finally decode someone. And over time, you stop asking, "How do I feel?" and start asking, "What is everyone else feeling? And how do I keep it from turning against me?" So when people say, "You care too much," what they often miss is this. You were trained to care before you were ever taught to rest. And that is why genuine empaths do things other people never understand. They leave conversations carrying emotions that were never theirs. They disappear when they are overloaded, then feel guilty for needing distance. They know someone is not okay long before there is any evidence. They can love deeply and still pull away without warning. They forgive too much, read too much, absorb too much, and then one day go quiet in a way that shocks everyone. Not because they stopped caring, because they felt too much. The first strange thing genuine empaths do is they answer the emotional question underneath the spoken one. Someone asks them, "Are you busy?" And they do not just hear a scheduling question. They hear the insecurity under it, the fear of rejection, the hidden hope, the possibility that this person already feels unchosen and is trying not to show it. And while everyone else responds to the sentence, the empath responds to the ache beneath the sentence. That is why people often say, "Wow, you just get me." Yes, but it is also why genuine empaths get tired in ways that make no sense to anyone else. Because they are not listening once, they are listening twice. They are hearing the words and the wound behind the words. They are tracking eye contact, timing, hesitations, deflections, the laugh that came too early, the silence that came too late. Their brain is not just having a conversation, it is running emotional forensics. The second strange thing they do is they withdraw when feelings get too loud, even if those feelings are love. This is the part people misread all the time. They think if an empath goes quiet, something must be wrong with the relationship. They think distance means coldness. They think retreat means indifference. But many genuine empaths do not pull away because they do not feel enough. They pull away because they feel too much at once. Their system gets flooded. Their mind gets noisy. Their chest gets heavy. What others experience as closeness, they may experience as overstimulation if there is no emotional safety holding it. So they disappear for a bit. They turn off their phone. They sit in the car for 10 extra minutes. They stare at the ceiling in silence, They say, "I'm just tired," because trying to explain emotional flooding to someone who lives on the surface feels impossible. And that is where so many people get it wrong. They assume silence means lack of love. Sometimes silence is love trying not to drown. The third strange thing they do is they grieve people before the relationship is over. They feel endings early. They notice when a soul starts leaving before the body does. They catch the subtle detachment, the missing warmth, the slight emotional delay, the energy that says, "I'm here but not fully." And because they feel shifts before facts, they begin mourning in secret. That is why an empath can seem strangely calm when a breakup finally happens. Not because it did not hurt, because they already bled in advance. They had already lain awake questioning the shift, already talked themselves out of their own intuition, already tried to rescue the bond, already carried both sides emotionally while pretending everything was normal. By the time the ending becomes visible, the grief has been living in them for weeks, sometimes months. And people never understand that. They say, "You moved on fast." No, they just started hurting early. The fourth strange thing they do is they feel responsible for peace, even in places they did not create the conflict. This is one of the deepest wounds genuine empaths carry. They walk into tension and immediately feel a pressure to soften it, regulate it, fix it, translate it, absorb it, or heal it. If two people are cold with each other, the empath feels it in their stomach. If someone is disappointed nearby, their body reacts like they caused it. If a loved one is dysregulated, the empath often abandons their own center and starts managing the other person's storm. This is not just kindness. This is conditioning. It is what happens when your nervous system links safety with emotional labor. You become the bridge, the buffer, the one who understands, the one who takes the edge off. But over time, this creates a dangerous illusion that your worth comes from how much discomfort you can metabolize for other people. And once you believe that, you start calling self-erasure love. You start calling exhaustion loyalty. You start calling hypervigilance intuition, even when it is slowly eating your peace. The fifth strange thing genuine empaths do is they can read dishonesty without always being able to prove it. They know when energy and language do not match. They feel the fracture between "I'm fine" and the face that says otherwise. They catch the charm that feels too polished, the apology that sounds correct but lands empty, the affection that arrives on schedule but not from the heart. And because they sense truth somatically, not just logically, they often struggle to explain what they know. They just know. Their chest tightens, their gut drops, their body pulls back before their mind can build a case. This is why so many empaths have been gaslit. Because when you feel what you cannot yet prove, people who depend on confusion will make you doubt your own signal. They will say you are imagining things, too sensitive, overthinking, projecting. But the body is often faster than the intellect. The nervous system catches inconsistencies before the conscious mind names them. And genuine empaths live in that uncomfortable gap all the time. The gap between what is true and what is socially acceptable to admit. The sixth strange thing they do is they love people they should have left sooner. Not because they are weak, not because they enjoy pain, but because they can feel the wounded child inside the harmful adult. They can see the tenderness buried underneath the defense. They can sense the shame behind the arrogance, the fear behind the control, the abandonment behind the avoidance. And this is where empathy becomes dangerous without boundaries. Because when you can feel someone's pain, you may start excusing the ways they deliver it. You say, "They don't mean it." You say, "They've just been through a lot." You say, "If anyone understands them, it's me." And maybe that is true. Maybe you do understand them. But understanding someone is not the same as being safe with them. That distinction changes lives. Because a genuine empath can become addicted to potential. Addicted to the version of someone that appears in soft moments, apologies, rare honesty, brief vulnerability. Dopamine keeps rewarding the glimpse. You start waiting for the good version to become permanent. You confuse intermittent emotional access with depth. You mistake intensity for intimacy. And suddenly you are loyal to a possibility while your real self is starving. The seventh strange thing they do is they go emotionally still right before they become untouchable. This is the shift nobody sees coming. Genuine empaths often give more chances than anyone realizes. They explain gently. They tolerate quietly. They forgive invisibly. They keep trying after the last visible reason to try is gone. But while everyone thinks they will always stay, something begins happening under the surface. The pain stops becoming sharp. It becomes clear. And clarity is dangerous to patterns that survive on confusion. One day the empath no longer argues, no longer over-explains, no longer begs to be understood, no longer performs emotional CPR on a bond that keeps dying in their hands. They become quiet, but not wounded quiet, different quiet, clean quiet. The kind of silence that does not ask for anything back. And that is usually the moment other people panic. Because the empath who once chased understanding is no longer chasing. The empath who once translated everyone else's emotions is no longer available for emotional extraction. The empath who used to reach back, soothe, soften, rescue, reassure, is suddenly still. And stillness changes the power dynamic. Fast. Because many people never valued the empath when the empath was overgiving. They valued access. They valued emotional availability. They valued being deeply seen without having to deeply show up. But once that access disappears, once the soothing presence is gone, once the mirror is removed, people feel the loss in a way that unsettles them. They start remembering your gentleness, your patience, your depth, your way of noticing what nobody else noticed. Now they are the ones rereading messages. Now they are the ones feeling the silence. Now they are the ones wondering why the warmth is gone. Now they are the ones obsessing over the very energy they once took for granted. And this is where I need to say something carefully. Do not use your silence as a performance. Do not become strategically cold just to make someone chase you. That is not power. That is pain wearing makeup. Real non-reactivity is not manipulation. It is nervous system dignity. It is what happens when you stop handing your inner world to people who only know how to touch it with unwashed hands. It is not about punishing anyone. It is about no longer abandoning yourself just because someone else is uncomfortable with your boundaries. Because if you break this pattern only halfway, you will recreate the same suffering with a prettier vocabulary. You will call it detachment while secretly hoping to be pursued. You will call it self-respect while constantly checking whether they noticed your withdrawal. You will go silent externally while staying emotionally chained internally. That is not freedom. Freedom is when your peace stops negotiating. Freedom is when being understood feels good, but is no longer required for you to remain rooted. Freedom is when you can care without carrying, love without leaking, see without saving, feel without folding. And this is the identity shift most genuine empaths are being pushed toward, even through heartbreak, even through confusion, even through the unbearable ache of being misunderstood. You were never meant to be an emotional landfill for people who refuse to face themselves. You were never meant to prove your goodness by bleeding quietly. You were never meant to turn intuition into self-betrayal. Your gift was not meant to become your cage. Yes, you feel more. Yes, you notice more. Yes, your body catches what other people miss. But maturity for an empath is not learning how to stop feeling. It is learning how to stop volunteering your soul for environments that only know how to consume it. That means some people will call you different, less available, harder to reach, not as soft as before. Let them. Because what they often mean is this: you no longer dissolve on command. And maybe that is the most misunderstood thing of all. A healed empath does not become cold. They become precise. They stop confusing access with connection. They stop confusing guilt with compassion. They stop confusing emotional labor with love. They no longer enter every room prepared to rescue the atmosphere. They no longer read every silence as their responsibility. They no longer chase closeness with people who are only comfortable receiving, never reciprocating. They become selective with their tenderness, intentional with their energy, devoted to their own inner safety. And when that happens, something beautiful begins. You can finally tell the difference between intuition and anxiety, between depth and chaos, between chemistry and nervous system activation, between being needed and being cherished, between someone who is fascinated by your light and someone who is capable of protecting it. That is the moment your empathy stops hurting you. That is the moment it becomes wisdom. So if you have ever felt strange for needing solitude after connection, for sensing endings early, for carrying rooms you never created, for loving too deeply and leaving too late, for going silent before disappearing, for knowing what people feel before they confess it, hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are burdened by a sensitivity that was never meant to exist without boundaries. And boundaries are not the death of your gift. They are the rescue of it. You do not need to become less deep. You do not need to become less caring. You do not need to harden into someone unrecognizable just to survive a world that misunderstood your softness. You just need to stop treating your sensitivity like a public resource. It is sacred. It is expensive. It is yours. And the moment you truly understand that, everything changes. The chasing changes. The choosing changes. The people you let near your heart change. Most of all, the story you tell yourself changes. No longer, why am I like this? Now it becomes, I finally understand what this is, and I will never let it be used against me again. That is when the empath stops being drained and starts becoming powerful. Not loud power, not performative power, not revenge, real power. The kind that sits calmly in its own body, the kind that does not beg to be believed, the kind that can walk away from what it once would have worshipped, the kind that knows this simple, life-altering truth. I can feel everything and still choose myself.